Going
Yeah, I
live now.
think she should.
We are live now. All right.
Can I get coffee still, or?
Wait, let's just first go through everybody's
Yeah.
introduction, and then
Yeah.
when Vaishnavi and Somak start, then we can like go back and get coffee.
Mhm.
Let me just. Okay. So she's saying just wait for 2 minutes. So once Kasturi gives us a thumbs up, then we go.
So 8 people are here. Kapil, you said you're in Portland. It must be
Yes.
really bad there.
It's we are having wildfires all around the West Coast, so it's pretty.
Yeah, I'm on the West
dreadful.
Coast as well.
Okay, so yeah,
Yeah, all
pretty
the
bad
three of
air
us are
quality.
on the because
Okay.
I'm in Vancouver and it's been bad here. It's like it's copper skies. We haven't seen the sun properly from like almost from when it started. So
Yeah, Vancouver and Pacific Northwest, we don't see sun anyways that much, but yeah.
no, like in Canada. I mean, no, it was quite sunny, but yeah,
The wildfires are pretty bad. Actually, the air quality and the
Yes.
smoke is all around. That's why it's so dim up here.
Yeah, I actually saw a few of them. I'm in Southern California, and I ended up seeing the Bobcat fire and the Valley fire from pretty close
yeah.
up. So it was kind of intense. I was just concerned that other people here just seem to not be that worried about it. They're like, oh yeah, fire. Whereas for me, it was so strange because I've just been, this is my second year technically here.
Mhm.
And I was like, what? Yeah, it was kind of
It,
intense.
this one is, yeah, California and has wildfires quite a bit, but this one is quite extraordinary because of the wind event that happened.
Mhm.
We had like 50, 60 miles per hour winds going through, and that caused the fire to spread across 1 million acres. Now the fire is burning across 1 million acres.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think there's 3 million acres in California burning.
Yep.
So shall we? I mean, this is an interesting conversation, but I don't know if people on YouTube are that interested in California fires. So shall we start? Okay. So hi to anybody on YouTube who may be watching. I don't know how many people there are. Kasturi said a while ago there were 8 or something. So we are a bunch of alumni from IISERM, and we're going to talk about applications to PhD program in the North America. So Vaishnavi and I, so I'm Neeraj, in case some of you have problem pronouncing that name. So there's Neeraj, Vaishnavi. We will be moderating the session. So I am at IISER Pune. Vaishnavi is in Vancouver. Where are you, Vaishnavi, exactly? I'm sorry, I don't.
University of British. No, that's okay. University of British Columbia. So I'm in Canada, and all the three of I and both the speakers, we all are on the West Coast. So we all are in this. It's 8:30 a.m. in the morning for all of us.
Yep.
And sorry, Neeraj, I just started speaking there. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. So
no, that's it. Yeah.
Okay. So Kapil is in Portland on the West Coast in the United States, and Somak is in San Diego, I assume. Is that
San
correct?
Diego, that's correct.
So Kapil and Somak are today's speakers. Kapil is a chemistry major from IISERM, and Somak did his majors in maths. We will of course go through a slightly more detailed introduction of our speakers when they speak. So I suppose let's begin. So with that, I will hand over to Vaishnavi and Somak, and Somak can say his 2 cents.
So I'm just waiting on Vaishnavi, I guess.
Yeah, I'm just waiting on. Okay, now it's just the two of us. So hi, Somak. Hi, everyone. Okay, so I was first going to say you are our next speaker, but you are our first speaker for today. So as Neeraj already mentioned, Somak, he's actually a recent graduate. He started in the MS-14 batch, majored in math, and you did your fifth-year final project with Dr. Nirja Sahasrabudhe. Actually, I think she a new faculty. She wasn't around when I was finishing.
She's relatively new.
Yeah.
She joined in 2017.
Okay, yeah. So that's the year I was leaving. Okay.
Right.
And he's currently doing a PhD from University of California, San Diego. That's on the west coast of the US. And you're doing your PhD in the Department of Mathematics. So yeah, I'll let you take it from here. So he's gonna give us 2 cents or more than 2 cents on how to apply for a school such as UCSD in the US. So Somak, just take it away. I'm gonna mute myself.
All right. Thank you, Vaishnavi. So I hope my screen can be seen. I'm just waiting on some feedback about that. It is visible. All right.
Yeah, I can see your screen. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Right. So I am a recent graduate from IISERM Mohali. I suppose that adds a very different flavor to the general talks that have been going on. I graduated last year. Feels like much longer, but I just graduated last year from Mohali, back when things were still normal. So let me just say a little bit about myself, I guess. So I came to Mohali in August 2014. It says over here it was a much simpler time. I was a math major at IISERM Mohali, and for those of you who are at IISERM Mohali and either contemplating doing math or who are already in the math major, you will know that it's intense, but you'll get through it, don't worry. I worked under Dr. Nirja Sahasrabudhe, and my final research thesis project was mainly a guided reading project, but we did a little bit of stuff here and there, and things work out, things don't. So that's pretty normal. So I guess, what am I up to now? I am going to be a second-year PhD student at UCSD. Seems weird to say that, but here I am. Second-year PhD student at UCSD. So technically, I guess I would call myself a graduate student right now, because I am not specifically doing any research, because our program, just like most other math programs in the United States, and I guess North America in general, are initially very coursework oriented. So I have to do 72 credits of courses before I advance to candidacy. And then just for reference, I put this number in here. So a lot of my friends here who are doing masters in, say, ECE or computer science, or the mainstream fields, they only have to do 48 units of coursework to graduate with a master's. So if you are planning on doing a math PhD, or applying to grad school in the US and you want to do math, you should be aware that it's very different from other parts of the world. There are a lot of courses here, and most programs are the same. There are a lot of courses. All right, and let me just see. So again, this is just stuff that I put on a slide last night so that I wouldn't forget, because it is 8:45 in the morning, and so hopefully I don't forget anything. So most math programs in the US are very similar. You will have to come in, and initially there are some exams that are offered. You get a choice whether you want to take them or not. I'll get into that a little bit later. But you do a lot of courses. You don't specifically come in here and then, there's no obligation at your end to immediately start being involved in research. You can come in, you can take your time, you can do a bunch of courses, you can look around, you can read with different people in your department. And then once you have a more concrete understanding of your own mathematical direction, once you have a sense of direction, once you have a sense of okay, this is really what I want to do, that's when you can really start working with somebody. I would say full on, really. You start working with somebody, and then you advance to candidacy, and then you're more actively involved in research. All right, so this is something that, so I should probably preface my talk with this, that most of these things are my personal opinion. And I did, of course, watch Martik's presentation yesterday, so I thought that this was an interesting topic to bring up again. So why a PhD? This should be a question that you ask yourself, ideally a little bit in advance when it comes to the application season, I would say, because if you're still having these thoughts about why am I doing a PhD while you're applying, it can take a toll on you. So I would say that maybe set yourself straight, maybe figure out why you want to apply for a PhD before you actually start applying for PhDs. Don't have like an identity crisis in the middle, like, oh, I'm applying, but why am I applying? Because that happens, believe me, I've seen that happen. So I would say, since this is a talk about applications to North America, and again, my sort of expertise, quote unquote, is with respect to the United States and schools in the US. So I would say that make sure you know why you're applying for a PhD specifically in the US. Things are very different in North America and in Europe, so you must think about this before you apply. In Europe, it's more focused on getting involved in research immediately. In Europe, you generally do not apply to a graduate school. You start off by applying to individual professors, and that's sort of the route that you take. Whereas when you apply to the US, you apply to a grad school and you apply through a program. It's more, I guess, it's more structured. Okay, and then there is another question that a lot of you might be thinking about. It's the whole academia versus industry debate. So being a math major at IISERM Mohali, it's one of those questions that you might think about, right? Because, for example, myself, I was not particularly big on the kind of stuff that was discussed in the math department in IISERM Mohali. I always was under the impression that it was a little too abstract for me. And so I envisioned myself not continuing in that realm and going into industry and doing something more applied. All right, so I see a question, Kasturi. I'll just get to it once I'm done with this slide. So that's something that you might want to consider. Of course, it's an individual question really, but academia versus industry, whether you want a PhD because you want to apply for jobs that require a PhD, whether you want to do a PhD because you want to get into academia, you like teaching, you like research, that's just some self-reflection that you should do before you start applying. And where are you headed next? This is a question that has to do both with your career arc, but also with, who you are as a person. Do you see yourself going back to the country? Do you see yourself, trying to go somewhere else? Things that are happening on a personal front, I guess, there's a number of things to consider. So, these are just some questions that you want to ask yourself and you want to know before you get into the application season, I guess. Okay, so there is a question for me in the chat that Kasturi has asked me. I guess somebody else asked Kasturi. So it says, does the GRE score make a big difference? Okay, so talking about GRE scores, let me first talk about the application, and then I'll get into the GRE stuff a little bit in detail. So
I'm just gonna say here that this is perfect because I was waiting for you to get your application, and then I was gonna be like, okay, how important is your GRE? Because I think that's a very important question everybody asks. So I'll let you continue, and then we can just get to the question.
Okay, all right, that's perfect. All right, so I've itemized sort of the number of list of things that you might need for your application, and the way I did this was just I opened up some of my old applications and I just went through them and tried to see what was what I put up over there, because if I'm correct, application season when I applied was almost 2 years ago, so it's a little hazy in my mind. But nevertheless, so transcripts, that's one thing that you want. Make sure you ask the department, make sure you ask your dean acad or whatever to give you transcripts well in advance. Sometimes that can be an issue because it's just a logistical thing, especially now with COVID. Having transcripts ready as early as possible, that's something that's very important. And I guess this is a little bit of a detour that I'm going to take. COVID has probably made things very different. A lot of people say unprecedented circumstances. It is true. And so for me to truly be able to comment about everything in 100% accuracy would probably be very difficult because, when I apply, things were very different. But nevertheless, you need to be aware of the things that you need when you apply and maybe try to figure out in the best way possible what you can do. If there are any workarounds, because of logistical limitations, because of COVID, getting physical things is impossible now. What if you are not on campus and you need to get a transcript? Things like this, I will not be able to comment on, but I'm sure there are resources we can also help you figure things out as well. So transcripts, that's the first thing. Then your scores, you will need a lot of test scores. Unfortunately, for fields like math, physics, theoretical physics, particularly statistics, and so on and so forth, schools do focus on test scores quite a bit. It is just how it is. So for me personally, I needed to write the GRE, the math GRE, and the TOEFL. TOEFL was a personal preference. You can either choose the TOEFL or the IELTS. It's really your call. But I think TOEFL is, again, this is my preference. I prefer TOEFL because it's generally over in one day. Whereas if I'm not wrong, for the IELTS, you need to go in and do a bunch of things. You need to give the speaking part, the speaking interview separately on a different day, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I put a couple of dollar signs at the end because unfortunately these standardized tests involve a lot of money. And again, I'll get to that towards the end. Your statement of purpose, that's something that's very important. That is a very, I would say that's probably one of the most stressful parts of the application. Truth be told, everything is really stressful, but statement of purpose, it can be very stressful. You have to write, basically an ad for yourself, but an academic ad. So, it's difficult. Then letters of recommendation. So I just want to say this over here, that when you say letters of recommendation, a lot of people think that, okay, when I need to get a letter, I need to get it from the most high profile person in the department. I need to get it from, so on and so forth. It needs to be the best person in the world, blah, blah, blah. I would say that in a lot of cases, if you ask people who are generally writing a lot of letters, chances are that you are going to get, of course, you get a good letter from somebody who is well known. But I would say that a generic letter does not add to your application as much as a, as much as a letter written by somebody who really knows you and you have worked with in a lot of detail, because a personalized letter of recommendation is very important. And I think it's something that stands out to application and admission committees. So I'll just get into that a bit later as well. I think I have a slide prep for letters of recommendation. Your application fee, that's something, again, the United States, there's a lot of money going around here and there. So when you apply to schools, you will have to pay an application fee. Unfortunately, that is just how it is. So that is something to be aware of. There are disciplinary actions that will be asked in your application. It's self-explanatory. You should probably just avoid any. Trust me, it's not worth it. And honestly, it's not worth it. If it's a question of a missed grade on your transcript versus a disciplinary committee, I would say just take the missed grade and it's fine. Like, of course, try not to fail, but don't be worried about a bad grade, because a bad grade does not affect your application negatively nearly as much as a disciplinary violation. Ethics is a very strong, or it's a very big deal over here, and don't get a disco. So the last, I guess, is, your application is going to give you an opportunity to say things about yourself that perhaps were not directly asked of you. So things like, if you feel you have strong leadership skills, if you have, if you're a good public speaker, if you have any extracurricular talents that you want to showcase, this is probably, there's usually a section at the end where you want to include all this stuff. It adds some diversity to your application, and also highlighting diversity, highlighting your background. That's always a good thing. You must be very proud of where you come from. You should take pride in yourself for applying, for being in a position to apply. And the reason I say that this is sort of miscellaneous is because a lot of times your statement of purpose is a place where you can talk about yourself, but be advised that that is where you have to talk about yourself from an academic perspective. So avoid any sort of tangential talk. Like, you might be very proud of something that you did, let's say a painting, or you wrote a song, or you did something, but the statement of purpose is not necessarily a place to showcase that, but there is a place at the end of your application generally where you can say that, oh, look, hey, I do this in my spare time, or I do that. So that's something that's there on your application. All right. So let me see. So talking about GRE, let me go into GRE, right? All right. So talking about the GRE. So there is the general GRE, there's the math GRE, and then there's the TOEFL, which is also an ETS administered exam. So the general GRE, in my opinion, is a rejection criteria, not an acceptance criteria, in the sense that a low score does not necessarily mean that you are going to get rejected. Of course, a low score cannot help your application, but a high score does not necessarily mean you get accepted. And so I would say that you want to make sure that your application is as strong as possible. So you want to focus on the GRE, of course, but don't stress about it too much. The general GRE is usually just something that is a formality, and and specifically when you're applying for math, you want to just make sure that your quantitative score is as high as it can be. Your English score is, if you get a good score, of course, it can't hurt you, but it's okay to get close to average score. I would say be above average, be above the 50 percentile range, but because the GRE English part is hard, there's no denying that. But for the general GRE, and also this is something that I want to tell you, that the scores are generally reported as, X out of 170 plus Y out of 170. People usually say the scores out of 340, but the scores are reported in terms of, the quantitative and the verbal split up. So you want to make sure that your quant score is as high as possible. Ideally, try to get a 170. It's not very difficult. It just requires, I would say, a solid 1 month's preparation time. So that's something that you want to do. The verbal part, it is what it is. I had a friend who tried to memorize a ridiculous number of words. It did not go well for him. And I would probably give you guys the same advice that I gave to him. Just, practice as many questions as possible. Don't necessarily aim to memorize 5,000, 10,000 words. That's not going to work. That's just not how it goes. The GRE score is important for theoretical fields, yes. So I guess that's like a TLDR. So too long didn't read kind of a response. Yes, it is important, but don't focus too much on it because it is the first step. It is not everything. Like, you could have a great GRE score, but if you mess up in the subject GRE, it may not help you out very well. So I'm just going to say a little bit about the TOEFL. So the TOEFL is, in my opinion, it was a relatively easy exam when compared to the GRE verbal exam. And it is something that you can aim to do well in, and you can prep for, well, I would say the prep time is less than the general GRE, of course. And I would say to prep consistently, but again, don't stress yourself too much about this. The TOEFL is something that should go okay. And if there's anybody in the audience who is perhaps not very confident of their English speaking skills right now, I would recommend, just speaking to other people in English. When you have to learn a language, that's just the way you pick it up, right? You can read textbooks and you can solve problems as much as you want. Nothing helps you learn a language like speaking it. So I would encourage you to start speaking in English as early as possible. I had a few friends who used to say things in their first and second year, like, "Arey, English kaun sikhega," and things like that. And I feel like they kind of regretted it when they came to their fourth and fifth year, because when they were applying, they realized that, they had 4 or 5 years to pick up on English, and it was a missed opportunity. So you don't want to miss any opportunities. Your peers, your professors, you want to contact them, you want to talk to them, just have general conversations in English. Try to make the change slowly. What if, English is not your first language? It's okay. What if you didn't learn English in school? What if you didn't go to an English medium school? It's okay. You can start off slow and then pick up the language. And I just want to say that you should try to maximize your speaking score, because that is important to the schools when you come here as an international student. Because when you come here as a math student, you will be TAing. So you will be a teaching assistant. And they generally have this litmus test basically for teaching assistants who are international incoming students. They want to make sure that they can speak in English. And so your speaking score is something that will determine that. And if your speaking score is low, then you have to set up a separate English interview and blah, blah, blah. And so, that is that is something that you want to be aware of, because I wish that I had focused on the English component a little more, the speaking component a little more, simply because I wouldn't have had to give a English interview, which is really just a question. They want to make sure that you can have a conversation in English. It's not that much, but it's a logistical issue. It's a headache. You have to go schedule it with somebody. So that's just that. The mathematics GRE. Okay, so the subject GRE is something that I know a lot of people are concerned about. It is a very intense exam. It is offered only once a year in India, and you have to you can't write it in Mohali, Chandigarh, or anything. You have to go to Delhi or another metro to take it. And I would say that it's the most important of the 3 exams. It can really make or break your application, especially if you are applying towards the higher ranked schools. Like, let me see what names come to mind. So if you are applying to, for example, Princeton, MIT, Harvard, Berkeley, UCLA, the big name schools, they definitely want to make sure that your subject GRE score is as high as possible. Again, you should be aware that the higher the ranking of the school, the more applications they get, and the more number of better applications they get. So they're just looking at different ways to sort of categorize or really order the applications, right? Because eventually they're just going to pick the ones that they like the most. And so there is that. So, Vaishnavi, are there any questions?
Yes, I was just gonna mention this. We are kind of close to the half-hour mark. It's fine. I don't want to cut you off or anything, but if you would like to talk about how, I don't know, how you already mentioned what all is required, like the transcripts, and so if you wanted to just talk a little bit about how your internships, how they helped, or were they helpful, or did they add to your application, just, and then I can take rest of, I think, you can just speak.
All right, so I just realized it's 9. Okay, so I have a slide for my internships and I guess academic trajectory. So my internships, I would say, if I had to just say in a couple of lines, that I think they were okay. They were not necessarily the most important thing to my application. I did make a lot of contacts and I did meet a lot of friends. That helped. But one of my referees, of course, was somebody that I met through a summer internship program. So there is that. That is something that I would like to point out. So my first summer, I did something in nano engineering, actually not in math. My second year, I worked in IISc, didn't really do much. Third and fourth years, it was more structured, more organized. I did the IISERM in IIT Bombay. And my final year, or my fourth year, I did go to a summer school. And I honestly felt like summer school was more beneficial to me as a math student than an independent internship, because this is, again, personal opinion, but I feel like summer schools are more structured. You get a chance to meet more professors and you get a chance to really be involved with them, as opposed to, when you do a reading project, it's very, okay, fine, read this and come back next week kind of thing. So I made a lot of contacts during my summer school, and I was in touch with one of them and used to update them about my 5th year project. And I think that sort of built rapport between him and I, and that allowed me to ask him for a letter of recommendation when I was applying, and I think that really did help. So that's about my summer internship. So I would say that if you're a math student particularly, try to apply for summer schools, try to apply for winter schools. That's where you can meet a lot of people. That's where you can really interact one-on-one with them, and they are going to give you a lot of their time, as well as you will be able to give them more time. So that's one of the things that I would like to say. Are there any questions? Any other questions, Vaishnavi?
Yes, there's actually one very. Sorry, did I cut you off? Was there? No, I think you covered most of the. It's only so I was just curious about this, because how did it shape what research you're doing now? Because when we were doing math, a lot of people, they used to say that they're lacking in this course or maybe this experience. They wish they had done something like this. So of course, with you guys and with the newer people, I think they're more aware of a lot of things. Did this so I'm not a math major anyway. So and did it shape what research you're doing now? So did that interest, the interest, is it the similar thing, or are you doing something totally different? And I guess another question is, do you have a system of rotation? So like for people like in biology, if you're working in labs, there are lab rotations, I think, in the US. So for math, I don't know. I'm sorry. Did you mention that, or do you like?
No, I can see that. Don't worry. I can get to that. Okay, so the first question, yes, I know that in IISERM, a lot of people have the same issue that, oh, we don't have courses we don't really have any courses in what people call applied math. We don't have any statistics courses. We don't have anything of that sort. So I do actually have a slide about that. So I just want to say that, yeah, my interests were more towards, I really like mathematical finance, so I like probability, and I ended up liking statistics and stuff. I know that there were no courses in IISERM, but my summer experiences did, I guess, shape my interests. And so I want to clarify that as a first, or having completed my first year, I'm not actually involved in any active research right now because I just have so much coursework to get out of the way before I do that. But with regards to your question about rotation, right? So generally what happens is once people are done with their coursework or are getting towards the end of their coursework, people start reading with different professors. So ideally, you should have a rough idea about the different fields that people work in your department. So the different schools that you're applying to, you want to make sure that either the areas that you're applying to, like there are a lot of people in the area that you're interested in, or you're interested in somebody, a professor in particular. So you want to make sure that either one of these two. So either you know who you're applying to, or you know what field you're applying in. And so, yeah, so once you get towards the end of your coursework, you do read with different people. So it's really up to you. You can read with a number of faculty, and then once you realize that, okay, this is the kind of stuff that I could see myself doing, that's when you sort of take the next steps. So you say, okay, professor, I want to, consider you as my advisor, and that's when you start setting up a committee and doing the whole candidacy stuff. So that's how it works.
No, it's just very sorry for cutting you. It's just very different in Canada. So I was just curious. That's it.
Okay.
I mean, it depends on the program, I think. Yeah, I think that's a very specific question, and after that, I think we can pass it over to.
Yeah.
So do you want me to read it out, or?
No, I saw it. I can get.
Okay. Okay. Perfect.
All right. So Anshuman, hope you're doing well. Yeah, the subject GRE is cancelled, and I did go through a few of the schools that I applied to. I did go through their websites, and I noticed that it says there that the subject GRE is optional. UCSD, for example, says that the subject GRE is not required for this year. So I would, this is a difficult question for me to answer as well, because it is important I know you're a physics major, I know it's important for physics and math, but if you are limited by the exam not being offered, then, that's pretty much all you can really say, right? You can't go to a different country to write the exam. Nobody's going to expect, that kind of, nobody's going to expect you to do that. So I would just say that if you're applying, to make it abundantly clear that, ETS is not administering the exam this year in my country, so there is literally no way for me to write this exam. Please let it not bring down my application. So make sure that is clear in your application, I guess. Let's say that, look, they're not offering the test, so I can't really take it.
Yeah. And I don't know if you have a lot of doubts, maybe, can you read our program administrators very much responsive, so you can just write it to them. Maybe they have the best knowledge for specific program requirements, maybe.
Yes.
That's what I advise to people who apply to UBC. Okay, so thank you so much. Sorry, I just rushed you towards the end.
No, that's
fine. We have a bunch of general questions which we can take at the end of the other sessions. So Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. I learned a lot. I hope others too. Thank you. Okay, so now we pass it to Neeraj and Kapil. And I think they're going to come back. Yeah, they're back.
Yeah. Hi, Kapil. And of course, bye, Vaishnav and Somak.
Good talk, Somak.
Yeah. So I suppose you have some slides. Anyway, so for those of you who I think most people who are watching this have probably not like IISERM Mohali people have students have no idea who we are. So I am from the MS10 batch and Kapil is from the MS08 batch.
Yes,
So
as old as
actually,
it can get.
so actually we got in touch yesterday after after Kapil passed out. That was the first time I have talked to him since he passed out. I think I've even actually when he was there, I barely interacted with him. But since some period was coterminous, we do know each other at least. So we were talking about how when I was in my first year, we played football matches during the annual sports thing and all. So I mean, it was good catching up with you.
Yes.
So Kapil did his major in chemistry and he worked in K.S. Vishwanathan's lab. And unfortunately, K.S. Vishwanathan is retired. So I suppose the new batch has no idea who he is. So like Kapil was into sports and he used to play football and cricket when he was in IISERM Mohali. I don't think you were part of the SRC ever, right?
No.
But that's good. I don't think SRC really did anything.
That time there was literally no SRC, just few folks.
Oh shit! I shouldn't say that because Kasturi was cultural. No, but
Arvind was the major professor. Arvind
Yeah,
was driving it.
But when I was in the SRC, I wasn't active at all. So I mean, you were like the second batch, right?
Yes.
So what was it like when like in the initial I mean, this is not a session about that, but maybe in a few words, if you could say like what it was like to be the second batch of IISERM Mohali and what made you decide to do a PhD. And I should also mention that right now Kapil has finished his PhD and he's working for Intel. I suppose you are in R&D, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Intel's R&D. And so what the transition from academia to industry was like for you. So I don't know if this is already included in your slides. If it is, then you can just bring up your slides and talk about it, and I'll just be quiet.
So slides are just a placeholder for me to talk to the folks. It's more of an interactive session is what I want. They can ask me questions related, and I'm more than willing to help them out navigate through the hurdles they are seeing currently. But as you mentioned, we were the second batch coming in, so we had our own perks in the way that we were situated in Chandigarh. We were in Sector 26. We were not in Mohali, and there was no campus in Mohali at all. So we could like walk to restaurants. We could go to Sukna Lake for morning and evening walks. That is what I liked about our campus. And we had real food. We were living with advocates who were going to be judged later. So we were getting paneer, which had paneer into it, and sweets and stuff for the mess for entirely an year or so. We were having or eating in the same mess as those people. So we didn't see the initial struggle of getting the mess and hostel settled out because we were living in suites where there was air conditioning. They took it off for sure after a few months when we started exploiting the system too much. But yeah, that is the memories which I remember from our initial time at Chandigarh. But an institution that has been set up recently, when we were applying for PhD applications or applying anywhere for summer internship, IISER was not even recognized. We had to take letters from our professors, to take letters from department head to explain them IISER is legitimate institute, and we are not coming out from, or we are not trying to scam them, taking their scholarships or applying to these PhD programs with IISER not being in the picture at all. So there were these hurdles which we faced as first or the second batch coming in. We coming out from 2013 graduate. We are as old as it seems, but we even named our sports teams by this fictional character, Dharti, Jal, Captain Planet. So I hope you guys have changed those names or at least try to get something newer. But this is all we could think of, and that's how the legacy began. I'm going to Somak mentioned quite a good points on how the application works in the current situation. I'm not gonna go into the details of that.
Kapil,
Yeah,
can you bring up your slides? I don't
sure.
know.
And yeah, I'm not presenting yet, but let me share.
Yeah, I played football for Dhati, so I always actually thought it was based on the whole 5-element funda. I didn't know you guys
Yes.
just came up with Captain Planet.
No, yeah, that's what I felt like at that time. Can you see the slides?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me know when you can see the slides. I think I'm presenting now. Neeraj, are you able to see the slides?
Not really. Anyway, let's just go on. If this might be just some
Yeah.
technical.
So let me see if we can do some other way of. Yeah, Kasturi is able to see a slide, so that's good.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was most of it, but I'm gonna talk a little bit about how the application, or according to me, my 2 cents into the 2 slides which I have for the application system. But most on I will be talking about on how it works when you, like, congrats if you get into the school that you desire for, but the fight does not end there. What about later? Everybody talks about the good part, but there has to be some things which you need to consider when you already applied and got into the school which you want. So that's my first slide would be about application advice. So many of the speakers would have told you the story that why you have to think about the first point. Why do you want to do a PhD? So that is the prime important factor. You have to think, if not now, you would be thinking about this question in the middle of your PhD for sure. I can guarantee you that. So better think about the question now than why you want to do a PhD. Take time to think about, okay, this is what I want to do, and this is what I want to do, or which field or fields you might be interested into. That brings to the second point. Research experience is prime application advice I would give. So gather as much as research experience you can get, from doing internships to interacting or doing summer programs, which Somak mentioned. Like, you can go to some schools which would provide you a summer program, so that you can gather all the experience. In the first 2 years, you're not even sure which stream interests you, right? So you're not sure if you would take chemistry, you would take biology or math or physics. So I would not discount that you consider other streams. Giving my personal opinion, I was also interested in biology. I liked chemistry, but I was interested in biology, and Professor Prasad did a great job at evolution, teaching us evolution biology, but that was my secondary interest. And later I pursued biophysics during my PhD. So do not discount the factor that you have other interest, maybe secondary interest in other streams. Try to experience that, or try to get that experience from either talking to your professors or doing summer internships, or not even summer. Then you can go in during your semesters, you can go visit their labs and see if something that interests you in other fields. Third point is, of course, statement of purpose, and that is your opportunity to express yourself, not personally. So don't go too personal, as Somak mentioned, and others would have also mentioned it to you. But this is your opportunity to tell them why you like their school, and why you like their program, and what you can bring to the program. So this is where you will have to express that this is my experience and how that joins with the program you're applying for. You can also mention, if you have low GRE scores, you can mention about that as well, that English is your second language, and you're trying, you might have test anxiety. That might be the leading cause of GRE score being a little bit lower, but on top you have other experiences, and in the overall mix, the GRE score won't matter that much. Your application is seen as an overall package. It's seen as a cake. So you might miss some of the ingredients, but if it's still a cake and it looks good, you would probably have a better chance. So do not hesitate if you have like a lower GRE score or a lower GPA. It's a mix, as I told you. If you have significant other benefits compared to the other candidates in the pool, you would have a good chance getting into the school which you want. And the most important part is recommendation letters. So I would say go for personal recommendation letters. It does not have to be head of the department. It does not have to be a Nobel laureate. If it is, then it is very good. But if you don't have those contacts, but you have contacts who can write you strong personal letters, that would be a major consideration. Template letters, they read through a template letter every second, I would say. But if you can give them something personal, if your letter tells them about you as a person, that would push your application way further. So these are, and then the last point is TOEFL low score. It's not a deal breaker. From our school, like the school I graduated from, is the University of Illinois. We had English proficiency programs. So your application was not stopped by, if you have a low TOEFL score. If your research experience and other factors that I mentioned were good enough, we had an English proficiency program which you could take. It would just cost you time, but it was no cost. And once you take that course, you're shown that you can perform or you can do well or speak well in English, and you will get all the opportunities with other research students would get, like teaching assistantships and so on. It would be a semester-long course for you, but it is given, and they are not judging you that your TOEFL score is low, so you shouldn't be getting into the school. So that is something I should mention, and that is unique maybe to my school, but proficiency classes were given and were just 1 hour long classes. And many of my colleagues, I've seen them taking those classes and getting good scores in those classes, and they were good to go with the TA or any other opportunities with other high TOEFL score candidates would get. So these are summarizing. These are the general advice, or my 2 cents on the application advice. The more details would be found in Somak or any other recent graduate, as they might know the process more than what I did, which was 7 to 8 years back. But I would like to emphasize here is once you get accepted, congrats that you got into the school which you wanted to, but the competition doesn't end there. Like all of the other candidates who have applied to a school, who have contacted a professor, you might not be the only one. So the professor you like, other candidates would like them as well. It does not have to be that you are the only one. If you are the only one, that's really good. And you can start working with your choice of professor, but that does not happen in top schools. At least it did not happen in my case. The professor I was interested in, at least 4 or 5 more candidates were interested into getting into that lab. So I would say do not apply to a school which just has where you have only fewer options, or only one option, I would say. You should look at a program in the sense of, okay, I have this as a primary, but I do have other professors which I like, or I would probably want to work with. That's where my first point goes. Have backup options. Have some more professors or interests you might have. Not just go with only one professor. Okay, this is where I want to do my PhD, and this is the guy I want to do my PhD with. That generally would be a disappointment. And that brings to the second point, is rotation program. So most of the grad schools would give you a rotation program, would provide you with a rotation program. That is basically you can, it's like a taster. You can go around and go around in different labs, see how the lab is, how the people are. It is their way of knowing you and your way of knowing whether you want to work in this lab. So it is a win-win situation. So I would say rotation program. If your school is not providing that, you can ask for it. You can ask your graduate administrator that you want a rotation program. And in the first 6 months of your graduate school, the department is funding you. There is no professor who's funding you. So the department would be able to accommodate your request if there is no rotation program. So I would say if there is a rotation program, take advantage of it. It is a win-win situation. The professor and the team would know you, and you will have the opportunity to know the professor and the lab you will be working in. And then the point is, for me, and this is my personal opinion, it's a long run and not a sprint. I would not call this as a marathon because I want to take it as a long run where I can at least finish my workout and still have energy to do something else, to explore something else. I do not want to get just doing 6 or 7 years of PhD and getting burnt out and not able to do anything else. So it's a long run for sure, but it's not a sprint. So plan and communicate that with your advisor, that this is how your progress is and this is how you see yourself after 3 years, after 4 years, and eventually whenever you want to graduate from your PhD programs. And during your PhD programs, even if you have funding, and yes, we all know that we are all funded as graduate students, but apply for external scholarships. That provides you with the flexibility for you to be able to do your own research or do your own project. That provides you with the benchmark of, okay, this is what I want to do, but the professor might say, oh, we are lack on funding, but you can say, I have secured my own funding. You would be able to explore all of that. In the end, everyone's journey is unique. I just quickly made this word cloud here showing my journey. I just put down my own resume and got this word cloud. So it covers what I have done, but everybody's journey is unique. You are not on anybody's timeline and nobody is on your timeline. So your path would be unique. Just don't worry about it. Try to do what you can and you will be fine.
Yeah, I suppose the important thing is to
yes, that's my slides for you guys. I'm ready to take any questions you have. More than willing to share my experiences, what I've transitioned from doing PhD to now working with industry almost 3 years. More than willing to take that.
So I mean, why don't we start with that? Like, what has this transition from doing a PhD to industry and working for Intel been like?
So I finished my PhD in 2017, and since then I've been working at Intel as an R&D quality and reliability engineer. So I take care of Intel's products, mostly semiconductor chips and high-end computer gaming chips. So the quality of that is taken care by my team. The transition, basically, I would say the skill set is most important. You have to decide whether you want to be in academia or you want to go into industry. That's going to be a really pivotal point, or I would say the decision you have to make. But my background in physical chemistry, I was doing Gaussian simulations with Professor Satyamurthy and Vishwanathan's lab. I was also doing infrared simulations. And then moving on to in my PhD program, it was more on the biophysical aspect, but molecular dynamic simulations and mathematical modeling is what my PhD was driven as. So the skill set which I acquired fitted very well with the role which I am on. And my decision of going into industry was basically I wanted to do challenging problems, but I do not want to pursue an academic career. I probably wanted to be on the side of, okay, I want to do challenging problems, but I want to see the results in maybe 6 months. We are on a tight timeline. We are selling products every year. So we have to be on a tight timeline. I see whatever efforts I've put into in 6 months. I can point out at a desktop and say, this is the chip I worked on, and this is the system it is. So that is more satisfying for me. And that's why I took a decision of moving from academia, where the impact you would see from maybe 2 to 3 years down the line, but I wanted immediate results of what I was doing. So that is something which was personal to me, and that made me drive into doing industry rather than academia.
this transition from chemistry to biophysics.
Mhm.
For you did biophysics in your PhD program.
Yeah.
How was that? Like, did you feel you were well equipped, or was it a steep learning curve?
That's a great question. Yeah, I highlighted a little bit about my interest in biology during my undergraduate or MS program as well. So I was not interested in Krebs cycle. No offense to anybody on the biology side. I could not remember all those names. I was not interested in the details of it, but I was interested in the biological aspect. So biophysics is a very interdisciplinary field. You do not have to know the entire nitty-gritty of a protein structure or protein science, or the cycle it goes through, but more on the physical aspects of things. I was interested in building instruments so we can measure dynamics of these proteins. We could simulate these proteins on a computer. You got to know that protein very well, but you do not have to remember everything on the biological front. So I would say, do not discount your secondary interest. Once a professor gave me a good advice. You could always move on to doing biology if you are a physical chemist or a physics major. And I took that by heart, because I'm not interested into the nitty-gritties of the biological processes, but I'm interested into how a protein would fold and what rates it would fold to, why it goes into a misfolded or a frustrated state. That is physics, and that is what interests me. So doing a spectroscopy on biological samples does not stop you from learning biology, but you do not have to be an ultimate expert in molecular biology or any of the other fields in biology. So for sure, explore your interest. There's no one stopping you from learning biology, or if you're a physics major or chemistry major.
Right. So there are some more. We have some questions. More questions. So, for example, the strategies that we've been talking about for applications, etc.
Yeah.
Do these also work for engineering PhD programs?
It's slightly different, but it does work. I have personal experience with friends who are doing engineering PhDs at UIUC, or were doing engineering PhD at UIUC. It is a slightly different. So there, on that front, you can present in a conference, and that's called a conference paper. That does not work with us in science. We have to have a peer review process, and you got to have a journal which publishes your paper. So engineering PhD programs might have applications where you would have more publications, but they would mostly on the conference side. So I do not call them as there are publications, they are good quality, but they're not peer reviewed, or they are not published by a third party journal. So they might have more publication front, so they're considered separately compared to any science or STEM program, or I would say basic science program. So on the engineering PhD side, the process is similar. They would also have to give the GRE, they would also have to give TOEFL, but the way your research experience is seen is different from an engineering PhD student.
Right. So, for example, I mean, you worked in biophysics, and so, I mean, obviously, did you have a lab with a lot of people in it? And
yes,
if you did, then I mean, so for example, since I am doing a PhD in math, basically most of the time it's just me alone with my thoughts, and like once in a week I go meet my advisor. That's all human contact I need. Well, that's not strictly true, because you need other people to talk to, but from the point of view of your PhD, that is the bare minimum that is required. But so because you are, for example, for you have a lab with a PI and a bunch of people working in the lab. How do people management skills affect your academics and lab work?
So it's a really good question, whoever asked that question. But I would say people management is a skill which is transferable, and that an industry would also see, because in an industry you are not working alone, and in a lab you are not working alone. In an experimental setting, you would definitely have folks you have to engage with, but the most important part is you got to realize that there are folks who are who are in the same lab also competing with you. That does not have to be a hostile situation over there. There is a method. There are methods where you can work together. Like we had a team calendar, so the instruments are limited, and the funding is limited, right? So the instrument time was divided onto a calendar which we used to maintain. Okay, this is the time I'm blocking, and nobody was blocking the time which for an extended period of time if they do not need that. So that's one way of avoiding conflict. So if you're pre-planning, okay, we'll set up a calendar. This guy would use the instrument at this time, and this is what I'm going to use the instrument for. People will respect that. But I would say that is a skill. If you have, it's very transferable. In industry, I'm working with 30, 40 folks every day from different backgrounds, different teams. So you have to have that people management skill. So they might not understand everything what our team does, but you have to be able to explain it to them. The same goes in a lab setting. You would have to take the respect of other folks. Okay, they are busy, or trade the time with them, and help them with their experiments, and you get help as well. So that's how it would definitely work out if you have a good people management skill set.
Right. That's a great answer. Okay, so we have some more general questions, and I think it might be a better idea to have Vaishnavi and Somak also on for those, so that we could have a slightly more discussion type of setup. But okay, they're already here. But before we begin that, I have a question for Kapil, which is not really related to PhD applications at all. I'm only asking because you're working for Intel. Why are Xeon chips cheaper than Intel i7 chips?
Sorry, didn't hear you. Why Xeon is?
So, for example, I was just looking at, I was trying to see how viable it would be to set up a server, and
Yes.
it turns out that certain Xeon chips are cheaper than i7, and I find that a bit surprising. So I was wondering.
I'm not going to comment on the pricing point. I'm not supposed to, but I'm going to give you a round the clock answer to it. We are a dominating part in a server market. We make most of the server chips for the entire server market. So we could afford to take a hit to get gains somewhere else. I'm just going to say that much.
Okay, that's still good enough. Right. So Vaishnavi and Somak are back.
Yes. So that was a general question. I think both of you can answer that. Sorry, I'm just trying to find it. So there's this. So they ask, do you miss anything if you are not enrolled in top end colleges like MIT, but enrolled into a state university? So I think a lot of people usually have this question. They think that it's only great if you're like MIT, Harvard, or colleges of that stature. But how would you both like to answer that?
I would just I have a counter question to that. I know what does that mean that you want to achieve is something you should know. I do not know what he's trying to say by lacking the opportunity, or what is the need.
I understand it mainly. I don't know, like I don't know. At least that's my understanding. If somebody asked me, more like a status, not status thing. It's like these names, they are big essentially. So what exactly should you be looking for? So you look just for the name of it, or it's mainly the research? Sorry, I don't want to answer this. So like so in terms of experiences, what you want to gain and things like that. I exactly read out what they said, but I'm trying to understand what they're saying. So maybe that's what they mean. How?
My thought would be just, every field is different. Chemistry is different, physics is different, so every program is different. Do not go for, just giving an example, Yale has good chemistry program, but not maybe the math or physics program. So do not go for just the Yale name or UIUC or any of the MIT, Harvard names. You should go for the program of your interest. Your program of interest might be, or the ranking, top US universities ranking is just misleading. You should go for the program specific ratings, and you should go for the program which interests you. And that might be a school, which might be a state school. Michigan State has a good semiconductor program, but that might not be good for someone who's looking for chemistry or physics. So it's very program specific, target schools according to your program, and something that you think has a good advisor or research program as well. So just think about all of those aspects in the mix. Somak might have a
Oh,
different opinion.
sorry.
No, I would also
I
probably
think I
say
need to clarify. Sorry, I'll just clarify. It says lack in terms of opportunities after PhD. So I
So
think that's what they.
that's what I wanted to know, because I know somebody would be interested in, okay, what opportunities I would have from a MIT or Harvard. But yeah, look, these for sure, every big tech company would have alumni from MIT. I'm working with folks with MIT, Harvard, everywhere, but they that does not mean that they do not know where the best programs are in a state university. We go recruiting at state universities where we think are the best electronics folks for us, or the chip manufacturing folks for us. I mean, this does not stop us from going to a state university compared to Harvard, MIT. They already had their alumni network. We don't have to go scout for people from Harvard, MIT. They would eventually come to the company by their alumni network. But state universities, not so much. We probably would also go recruiting there.
Right.
Do you want to add something, Somak?
Sure.
Sorry, Neeraj, I cut you off.
okay. So I would just say that I can't really comment about opportunities after PhDs because Kapil and I are on very different points in the time. And I feel Kapil is more of an authority here. But
Not really.
my 2 cents over here, I would just say that being in a quote unquote smaller school is not noticeably different from being in a bigger school, because really when you're doing a PhD, you want to work with somebody who interests you and excites you. That's all that really matters. Like at PhD level, I would say that brand value, at least my understanding is that brand value is, well, it's there, of course, but it's, for example, if you're heading into academia, the work that you do is more important from where you do it. So that's just kind of what I wanted to say. Yeah.
But I would not say like just add to that. Do not just try to get into any US school. That's easier these days. Have a plan. I mean, there should be a logical way of you saying, okay, I want to apply to this place and this is why I want to apply. There should be that answer in your head. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, for example, don't just join Trump University.
Yeah.
Unless you like Trump.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Here's a question. So, for example, in IISERM Mohali, at least in the initial phase of its integrated PhD program, it was extremely hard for people to get an exit option for masters. They did manage it, and I don't think such an exit option exists in the IISER Pune integrated PhD program, for example. So how viable is it to get a master's exit from PhD programs in the US? So we can start with Kapil and then go on to Somak. He can add his thoughts.
So I do know the philosophy of probably why IISER does not allow that, because it's an investment on IISER's front. They're paying you to conduct that research. They have invested time in you. They're invested resources into you. The same goes with the US universities as well. You are coming in as a graduate student who's being paid, right? And master students are usually not paid. You have to secure their own funding. Or sometimes they might get paid if the professor has funding. But that is coming as a point. They are investing in you, so you would definitely burn some bridges. That professor is not going to give you a good recommendation if you bail out doing a master's, saying that you were probably going to do a PhD with them. So that does not stop you from doing it. If you think that this is it, you don't want to do it, you don't want to continue PhD with this professor, for sure you can bail out and get out with a master's, and US universities will allow you to do it. I have never seen a case that has not been allowed, but remember that you would definitely burn some bridges, and if this is the decision you are making, it should be a very conscious decision. Nothing stops you legally or any other way. to bail out as a master's, but you surely will burn some bridges.
Okay, so I want to say that for math programs, again, I can only sort of specifically talk about UCSD, but I would assume that the situation is similar for other universities as well. So, since math programs are very coursework oriented initially, it is not unheard of for people to just sort of get burnt out and leave and with a master's. Some people, of course, end up realizing halfway through the program that they're not really interested in a PhD, blah blah blah. So it does happen. I, for example, know a couple of people who did from the previous cohort who actually did just do the coursework and then leave. So it is something that happens. I would say that it's a little easier perhaps to do it from math departments because you don't necessarily have that many strong connections with a single advisor by that time because you're still looking around. But of course, I think that's still if you make this decision, you must be aware of any sort of repercussions because you did join the university to finish your PhD there, and you were as Kapil said, the university has been putting time, money, and resources into you, and then so that's just something to be aware of, I guess. I guess to sum it up, it does happen in math departments, but again, you want to make sure that you really want to do it before you actually go out and do it. Yeah.
One last question. This is, I think, this is a very important question because you're sitting on the other side of, when you're applying, you're sitting on the other side of the globe. You're just filling up an application, etc. So how do you gauge your lab environment? So you don't really know what's happening till you maybe get there, or is there a way to find that out? And whether if your PI is toxic, etc., how you get around that, or even like find that out? How do you? So is it like there's no way you know it till you get to the lab, or there are ways we can find that out? And how do you get into a good lab in all aspects, essentially?
Yeah. I'll let Somak talk about it a little bit, and then I'm gonna say some ending statements because he's probably the one who's dealing with it in the current state.
Okay, so I would say that this is a very difficult question to answer because, truth be told, I don't know the answer to it myself. There are a number of things that you could do. You could reach out to existing students there. You could reach out to seniors. If you have any connections through an alumni network, then that would be one of the good things to do. I know that it is generally a little difficult to get opinions about graduate students and their well-being because most of the forums that exist online for US universities are for undergrads. For example, UCSD has a very active subreddit, and I know that there's a lot of insight that can be gained from for undergrads, but for grad students, it's very minimal. So it is a difficult question to answer, and of course, I also want to say this that the chances of there being a perfect lab, with everything considered, is very low. So be aware of that. But I guess you want to make sure that the person you work with is putting out active research, but you also want to just get in touch with their current students maybe and just um, gauge the situation because at that point of time you are not necessarily committed to them in any way. So before you apply, you can just say that, hey, how's it going? Is so and so do they help you out, blah blah blah. I guess these are questions that you could ask, but really I would say that I don't really have a very good answer to this question, so I'm going to let Kapil take it from here.
Yeah, so my suggestion would be, like, for sure these days you're connected via internet, you can for sure reach out the current lab members, and if they are available, people who are really helpful, they will get back to you, but they would not say anything that's going to hurt their relationship as well. So remember that as well. It's going to be your judgment in the end. But as I also mentioned in the slides, the rotation program, if the university does not offer it as a formal rotation program, I'm telling you, more than 90% of the time you can ask for it. As for the starting 6 months of your grad studies, as the program is funding you. the department is funding you. Your professor, no professor is providing you any funding at that point. So you can have that leverage of asking, hey, I'm not comfortable, or I have not made up my mind yet. Can I do a rotation program a month each in these labs? And they would most likely be saying yes. And with the coursework you're already being taking, you would say, okay, I'm just going to do a rotational lab program, 1 credit, and do a 3 lab tour kind of a rotation program. So ask for it. There's no harm in not asking for that program. It's an opportunity, I would say, for you as well as the lab to know you, how the match is. So that is going to be my advice. Do not 70% of your conversation would be with your teammates and your professors. So remember that. Choosing an extraordinarily big shot guy with no availability, or someone who is okay and actively researching and giving you time, that's a choice you got to make.
Right, great. So I suppose it's been over an hour, so we should close the session. So first of all, I have been informed that there is a feedback link in the YouTube chat, and I think in the description also. So if there are people who have watched any part of this video on YouTube, please use the feedback form and give your feedback. It would help us organize future videos, and it will help us figure out what kind of videos we should and webinars we should do in the future. With that,
I'll just say an end statement. So if you reach out to someone on LinkedIn, give them a note. Do not send them blank, empty connects. Means I am an IISER alumni. I see your profile. I see that you are from IISER, so I'm going to accept it. But anyway, this is a networking advice to you. Send them a note. Tell them how you know them. That's going to take you a long way. That's it.
Yeah.
Neeraj, you can take over.
That's really nice advice. So with this, I would like to first of all thank both of the speakers who have given us their time and of course time and energy into making the talks and like figuring out what all things they want to say in annus horribilis, as Somak called it in his slide. I mean, it's good that you're doing well, and I hope you stay safe in these times. So thank you, both of you, Kapil and Somak. I would also like to thank the organizers, especially Kasturi, Vinay, Vaishnavi. You guys have been doing a lot of work. I mean, I've basically been a puppet through all of this. I've just been saying things that Kasturi has been telling me to. So
Kasturi,
thank you guys.
You can talk to us directly.
Yeah. So thank you guys for organizing this. And lastly, I would also like to thank the Alumni Association for coming up with this idea. So therefore, I am thanking myself because I'm the secretary and other board of directors. But I am being very arrogant when I say this. But I mean, I thank the association for organizing this. And I suppose that's it from us. I am not going to be a conventional YouTuber and ask people to like, share, and hit the bell icon, something like that. But I suppose implicitly I have said that.
I think you just did.
So that's smart.
With that, we will end this session. And thank you to people who have watched it on YouTube.